There are just 2 game weeks left in the Premier League season, and there is no room for error for the title race between Arsenal and Man City. Everything is so close. Also, in the relegation battle between Tottenham and West Ham, there is still no room for error, and people need to take advantage. And also, the European spots are still not decided. But I'm going to be taking through all the different games, and I'm going to be starting with Aston Villa hosting Liverpool. Now, both teams are still on the same number of points, but they're separated by goal difference. Any team that gets 3 points at any point this season for the final 2 games will be confirmed to be in the Champions League. So a win for either team will guarantee them Champions League football next season. They're separated by goal difference, like I mentioned. And if we're being honest, Liverpool have had a very poor season by all standards. And it looks like Slaughter will be staying. That is a different topic for another day. I will get to it as a Liverpool fan. I would explain what I think about that on another day. But it's been a season to forget, and getting to the Champions League will definitely at least give the fans something to be happy about before the end of the season. Now, Villa are in the Europa League final, and the important thing is that the game is just after this game, so they might be preparing for that, and it's also guaranteed that if you win the Europa League final, you will be in the Champions League. So Villa actually have 2 chances to get to the Champions League. They would obviously want to win the Europa League because you don't go all through this season, get into the final to lose. So they'll want to get there. But at the same time, they would also want to remain in the top 5. So this might be a game where they might rest players just because of what's happening in the final. But at the same time, I think they will still want to do what they can to get a result in this one. So maybe a draw or a win for them would be fantastic. A loss wouldn't even be too bad for them, but they would like to go in that game with positivity as well. Now, they can still finish 5th, so that's the most important thing, regardless of what happens in the Europa League final. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that both teams have not been in great form. Liverpool have not won any of their last 2 games, and also Aston Villa have just 2 wins from their last 9 games in the whole Premier League. So this is a team that's not necessarily doing well in the league, but they're making sure that they're doing everything they can in the Europa League to get to that final and also win it. So for this one, just because of form and just because of what's on the line and the Europa League final that's happening very soon, my prediction is that it's going to be very tight, but I expect that Liverpool will be able to get the job done. As a Liverpool fan, maybe I should not be so hopeful because I've seen Liverpool mess up so many times this season, but I would just assume that this Aston Villa side is so focused on the Europa League final that they will probably have their mind set on that. So Liverpool should be able to get a win in this one, and I'm going for a 2-1 victory for Liverpool. Manchester United host Nottingham Forest, and if we're being honest, there's not a lot on the line for this game. There are positive vibes at Old Trafford because they qualify for the Champions League, and a point will guarantee that they'll finish 3rd regardless. So I think this is one of those games where you know that there's nothing too much to fight for. Nottingham Forest, on the other hand, they're safe from relegation and they're out of the Europa League, so there's not a lot that they're fighting for, if we're being honest. Now, I think the vibes at Manchester United are very good. They're guaranteed to finish in the Champions League positions. Michael Carrick is looking like he's going to be the next manager. They haven't lost in their last 4 games, although they drew their last game 0-0 at Sunderland. And they'll probably be sending Casemiro off in this game because it's the final home game of the season, and they'll be launching their new kits as well. So in terms of vibes, I think everything is going to be good for them, and they'll like to have some positive energy. So I think for this sake, they're going to try and win their game. But if you look at it, Nottingham Forest have not lost in their last 8 in the league, which is quite interesting. So Nottingham Forest are not necessarily a walkover, and the last time they played at Old Trafford, Nottingham Forest actually beat Manchester United 3-2. So it's one of those ones where it can be very interesting in terms of how this game goes. But my prediction is that because of what United have on the line for this one, their final game of the season at home, they'll probably want to have a very proper and nice send-off for the season. So my prediction is that Manchester United will be able to get the job done 2-0 at Old Trafford. Moving on to the title race, Arsenal host Burnley, and if we're being honest, Arsenal are in full control of the title race right now. They've won their last 3 games and they must be feeling very confident, especially going into their final 3 games of the season where they have 2 trophies to win. So in terms of the vibes right now, Arsenal are doing really well, and it's their final home game of the season against a relegated side, Burnley. So Burnley don't really have much to fight for, and it looks like a game where Arsenal could really run up the goals because that could put a lot of pressure on Manchester City as they face Bournemouth, who are quite a tough team. So I expect them to win their final 2 games of the season. I don't think it will be so simple because the nerves will be there, but I still think that they will have the right energy to get it done, and especially with the fact that they're playing at home at the Emirates, there's going to be a lot of positivity from the crowd. They're going to really want to cheer them up, and they know that they only have 2 games left, so they're going to really spur them on to go and get a good result in this one. So like I said, I think it's time for Arsenal to run up the goals. They have to run up the goals, but I expect that Burnley will not necessarily just sit back and watch and help them, take as many goals as possible. But I still think Arsenal will be able to get the job done and beat Burnley really well, because Burnley have been in terrible form. And like I said, they're not fighting for anything. So my prediction for this game is that Arsenal will win 3-0. I think it'll be better for them to win 4-0, but it's not always that simple. But my prediction is 3-0 to Arsenal against Burnley. Bournemouth versus Manchester City. Now, this game is a must-win for Manchester City. It's going to be a tough game, don't get it twisted. And if they lose this game, there's a potential that they actually lose the entire title race this week. It's going to be a tough game. Bournemouth are doing really well. They're unbeaten in their last 15, and they're sitting in 6th position, which could be a Champions League position if Aston Villa win the Europa League. So they have a lot to fight for. And in their recent games, both of them have won 4 games and drawn 1 in their last 5. The Cherries need to stay in 6th, like I said, for the Champions League positions. If they lose or if they draw, Brighton will actually go above them into 6th position. And with only 1 game to go, that is too much of a risk for Bournemouth right now. Now, City will also be playing in the FA Cup final 3 days before this game. So how refreshed will they be? Will they be able to give their best? But right now, they cannot afford to drop points. I think this game is going to be extremely tight. But my prediction for this one is that Man City will just be able to get the job done and take it to the final day of the season. So my prediction for this one is Man City to win by 2-1 against Bournemouth. Chelsea versus Tottenham. Now, this is a clash between 2 underperforming teams in general. Chelsea in the league recently have been extremely poor, and their only wins recently have come in the FA Cup. Now, they've lost their last 4 at home in the league, and they've scored only 1 goal in that time frame. The last game that Chelsea won outside of the FA Cup was on the 4th of March. Which shows how far back it's been. It's been over 2 months since Chelsea won a game in the league. So obviously they need to win in order to finish above 9th, because 9th position for Chelsea is just not good at all. Spurs are still fighting against relegation, and this is a must-win game for them. There is no other option but to win to stay safe. Now they're in better form. They've gotten 8 points from the last 4 games. That's 2 draws and 2 wins. So it's looking a bit good for Tottenham in general. But one thing you have to also take into account is that Tottenham do really poorly at Stamford Bridge. They've only gotten 1 win at Stamford Bridge in the last 36 years. So something has to change for Spurs in this game, because if West Ham win their game, all of a sudden Spurs may be in big trouble for the final game. So I think this one is hard to tell with the way both teams are playing. They've really been poor. I think it's going to be very hard for either team to win this game, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this match. Leeds versus Brighton. Now, Leeds are safe from the drop zone. There's not much they're playing for, although they haven't lost in their last 7 games in the league. Brighton, on the other hand, are in decent form. They've won 3 of their last 5 games, so it's looking really good for them. And if Bournemouth drop points against Man City, there's a world in which a win for Brighton will take them into 6th position. So there's a lot on the line for them, and 6 could take you to the Champions League this season. Leeds will be difficult to beat because they've been really a tough nut to crack recently. But with what's on the line, I think Brighton will be able to get a win in this one. So my prediction for this one is a tight win for Brighton, and it's going to be 1-0 for me. Newcastle versus West Ham. Now, West Ham must win this game, or they could actually go down this week. So it's all to play for. They have to get 3 points in this game. If they drop points and Spurs win, that's the end for them. They'll be playing in the Championship next season for sure. Now, Newcastle have not been good this season. They've been very inconsistent. And recently in the league, they've actually been really poor. But Newcastle can spring up a win from anywhere. You know how Newcastle can be. Quite inconsistent. Good on some days, bad on some days. You never really can tell with Newcastle. Now, getting to Europe is probably too much for them. I don't think they'll be able to do it with the way other teams are playing right now. So, at least they'll still have to do what they have to do and try to get something. And it's their final home game of the season, so they may want to give fans a positive thing to smile about for the end of the season. But West Ham will be fighting tooth and nail for this game. They cannot afford to lose this game. In fact, they must win this game. And the only advantage they have is that their opponents in terms of the relegation zone will be facing Chelsea, a side that they really struggle to beat. But for this one, I'm predicting that it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Will that be enough to save them from relegation? I'm not sure, but we shall see. Everton versus Sunderland. Now, both teams are winless in their last 5 games. But they could also be looking at a possible Conference League position, because both of them are well in around the European spots right now in terms of points. Everton are scoring quite a number of goals. They've scored 9 goals in their last 5 games, but they've not been able to win any of those 5 games. Sunderland beat Everton earlier this season in the FA Cup, so it's also something positive for them because they know that, oh yeah, we have beaten this team before and we can try again. Now, a draw in this game would effectively eliminate both of them from getting to Europe, in my opinion. But honestly, this one is a very difficult game to call in terms of who's going to win. But with what's on the line and how I'm looking at both teams, I'm going to predict that Everton will just be able to get a result in this one and beat Sunderland by 2-1. Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Fulham. Now, Wolves have nothing to fight for. They're guaranteed to go down. Although there's a world in which they may end up finishing 19th, but it's still not enough for them to stay up. Now, it's their final home game of the season, so maybe they want to put a good fight before going to the championship. You never can tell. Fulham still have a chance of playing in Europe, so there's something for Fulham to fight for. But recently, they have not played well. They are not really winning games, and they're not playing like a team that wants to go to Europe, in my opinion. Now, they need to win this game if they're going to stand any chance of going to Europe. So, just because of what's on the line and the fact that Wolves are already down, I'm predicting that Fulham will be able to get a 2-1 victory in this particular game. Brentford versus Crystal Palace. Now, Brentford sits in 8th and they can finish in 6th position. So, they need to win this game if they're going to stand a chance of still getting to the Champions League, although Europa League looks a bit more feasible for Brentford. Now, if they fail to win this game, they cannot go to the Champions League, so it's a must-win game for them. Palace right now are not playing really well. It seems like they might be on vacation for the Premier League in general because their main focus is on the Conference League final, which will be happening 10 days after this game. So, if you also look at the context, Crystal Palace have only won 4 of their last 21 games in the Premier League. 4 wins from 21 is no good record at all. And with what's on the line for Brentford, I find it hard to see a world in which Brentford won't be able to beat Crystal Palace. So for this game, I'm going for a Crystal Palace loss. I'm thinking that Brentford will be able to win this game by 2-1. That's it for my predictions for this game week. Make sure you like the video, share with a friend who might enjoy this kind of content. Let me know what you think about the predictions. Let me know your predictions in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.